Hey, it's Kevin DeWitt here, and welcome to another tip, trick, or technique session. In this video, we're going to have a look at some techniques around placing instruments in locations in your mix. So firstly, if you are new to my channel, new to my videos, and you like what you see, please click the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell to be notified of all my future videos. So one important factor to mixing is finding a place within your mix for all your instrumentation, okay? Very rarely do you want everything just to be sitting down the middle. You're going to end up with a very mono mix. You want to find different ways of getting instruments to sit in different places, you know, in the stereo field, left, right, whatever. You might want them to appear more in the front, more in the back. They might want to be higher, lower, whatever else. In this video, I'm going to show you a couple of techniques that I use in my mixes to do that, and that you can use on your mixes as you go. So let's just get into it and I'll show you around. So location of instruments in the mix. So what I mean by this is how to do different techniques to place your instruments in a space in a mix. That could be, the space could be left and right, it could be further forward, further back, higher, lower, anything like that. So we want to fill the area and the space around us with this music. And we don't want everything sitting in the one spot. So for instance here, if I play this track here, pretty much everything is sitting in the middle, and it just doesn't sound good. It's very bland, it's very boring for our ears, and everything's straight down the center. Now, the only things that's really panned at the moment is the drums. So the first technique to placing an instrument in a mix is obviously panning. So for instance here, you know, we have overheads that are panned left and right. We've got a kick down the center, snare down the center. We have our toms panned out to slightly different various spots in our ears, and our hi-hat slightly off center, and our room is wide as well. So if we were to listen to just the drums, so you can imagine here, if I was to put everything to center and including the stereo items here, put them to center. Drums sound very boring. It sounds like, you know, somebody far away is just sitting right in front of you and their entire drum kit is just closed in. So let's play that again and let's start to pan things out a bit. I'll leave the stereo ones in the center at the moment so that you can hear more of the effect of the other instruments. So suddenly we've got our hi-hats moved over a little bit, and we're getting a little bit of atmosphere here when we have our tom runs where they're going from left to right, sort of panning across your ears. That's sounding good, but we can do some more. Now, obviously now we've got our room and our overheads panned out to stereo, And the drums are all sounding good now. But you can hear how we've got it nice and wide for the drums there. But what about the rest of the instruments? Okay, our guitars are still sounding very boring. They're straight down the middle. So again, we can obviously use panning as our first technique. So we could start panning some guitars out. Now we're getting somewhere with the guitars. Okay, so obviously panning, that's a pretty obvious one. Most people probably know that. So we've got some space left and right in our field. We've got some stuff down the center. We've got some stuff fully left and right. We've got some stuff partly in the middle, which is a nice thing to do to fill things up. I like to fill in little gaps here and there, not everything left and right, not everything in the center. I like to fill a little bit out here and there. So how else can we do it? What about the front and back? So one common way to do front and back would be to look at volume. How does volume affect what we do here? So let's mute one of these. I'm going to put this down the center. Now you may notice there that when I lower the volume, it sounds like the guitar is further back. And the louder I put it, the closer it sounds to you. So we've got panning now. Now we've got volume. So volume is controlling where something sounds to you in the mix. So the louder you make something sound, the more it is in your face. The lower you put it, the further back it sounds. As long as you can still hear it. Obviously, if you take it all away, then you can't hear it at all. So that's a common technique for placing something front or back in a mix, is by using the volume. Now, another technique to do that as well can be to make something sound duller. So we might EQ something or filter something. So you can obviously hear quite easily there that when I dulled the audio source down, it sounded like it was a lot further away. So that's another common trick. If you can play with volume, but you can also play with how it sounds. If you make something brighter, it's going to sound closer. If you make something duller, it's going to sound further away. Now we can obviously also make something sound thinner. And that sort of have a similar effect in that it sounds a little bit further away to me, but it's still got the higher pitchness to it. So it's not as drastic as dulling something down, but because we're thinning it out, we're taking a lot of weight off that instrument, and that way it's losing a lot of its impact, and it is sounding like it's further back because we've thinned it out our ears and our brain are thinking that something is further away because of that thinness to it or that dullness to something. Now, obviously, other techniques we can use is we can use things like reverb. So if I had a vocalist or a guitar and I felt that it was a bit too close to me, so it felt like it was right in my face, you might decide that we can put a bit of reverb on this to take something and move it back a little bit. So I'll play it straight and then I'll bring it in and we'll see what impact that has. Now, if I put this in solo, and I'll just raise the wetness up a little bit here. Really concentrate on listening to this. And if you're listening on speakers, even try putting a pair of headphones on to have a listen to it doing this, and listen to it as I turn it on and off, and get a sense for how it feels. Do you feel it sort of like it's moving backwards away from you when I turn the reverb on? So we can use reverb to place something as well in the mix. So it might be something as simple as a little room there, which, as I said, is moving the instrument away from me. So if you've got an extremely dry vocal and it just sounds very intense and right in your face, just a little bit too unbearable, but you don't want to muddy it up with a lot of reverb because you want it to be a nice dry sound, just add a very little bit of small room, just enough to get it to feel like they've stepped back out of your face, give you a little bit of room to breathe, but you haven't washed it in reverb. Now, obviously, we can go for other type effects here. So we might want to add a bit more. And we can really get it to stand out. So we've got so much reverb on it now that it sounds like it's just not even in the same room. It's just way down a tunnel miles away. So again, we're using reverb to place this somewhere different. Now, another thing we can do is if I'll load up a couple of presets here. So, because we have a mono guitar here, when we put the reverb on, it's staying mono. But if I put reverb onto a stereo send, we can then send to that, and we can then add some stereo reverb to it. So we can send as little or as much as we want. So let's have a listen. I'll turn it on and off. So let's start with it in solo. So what's happening with this now is because we're doing it to ascend, we're still getting our dry signal of the lead. So it's still staying fairly well up front. We're not washing it out entirely, but we're adding some width to this now. This plugin is now giving it width. So if we listen to that, So now we have the ability to make something sound a bit wider by adding some stereo reverb to something, or it could be a stereo delay. It doesn't have to be reverb, but different types of reverb can do different things as well. So we can add a different type and we might get a different effect. So with a brighter hall type effect here, not only are we adding a bit of width, but if you listen closely and you just sort of imagine it, you can also feel and hear that it's getting some height to it. So it feels like the signal is going up and down, getting a bit taller almost. And what you can do is you can even add more than one. So we might say, okay, I'm going to blend in a little bit of this plate to give some width, and then I'm going to add in a little bit of this hall to give some height to the instrument. So I'll just switch between nothing to both. And then if we do it without solo, so in the mix. So you can see there's lots of ways to get where you place things in the mix. So we have, just to recap, we've obviously got panning. We can pan things fully left, fully right, down the center, part way in between. There's no rules on where we pan things, whatever you like. We can move instruments forward or back by using volume. So the louder we make it, the closer it gets, the lower we make it, the further away it gets. We can also use EQ or filters to make something duller, to make it seem further away. We could make it brighter to make it sound closer. We can thin it out, which again makes it feel a little bit further away without losing the brightness. We can then use some reverb like a room or something like that, a mono reverb, to push something a little bit back out of your face. We could wash it entirely in reverb and make it sound like it's miles away in a tunnel, in a cave, whatever. And then we can use some stereo reverb to create some width or even some height with a brighter hall or something like that. We can give it some height and width. So there you go. There is some techniques to placing your instruments in various locations of your mix, getting them all to stand out and have their spot in the limelight. Let's say. Let me know what you think of it in the comments. If you have any questions around this or issues that you're having around that sort of thing, please feel free to put them in the comments. I'd love to help wherever I can. Again, if you like what you see here, please click the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell to be notified of all my future videos. I really do appreciate everybody's support, and it helps me to make more and more of these videos as I go. Hopefully the video has been helpful. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.